Well, the justice system hasn't changed, okay? It has always been racist. It has always been biased. It has always been brutal.
I think there's a direct line back to it. I think there's a direct line from slavery to Jim Crow to immigration.
So one of my kids is named Martrell. He was walking home and a patrol car pulled up along the sidewalk beside him. And there's two officers. An officer in the passenger side is smoking a cigarette. And they start asking him a bunch of questions like, who are you and how old are you and where are you coming from? What are you doing in this neighborhood?
I think they definitely target youth the most.
He tried to give them, he pulled out his school ID and they snatched it away from him, and then they're talking to him, they never even looked at it. They're telling him, oh, you're lying about how old you are. And then they give the ID back, and then the officer in the passenger seat who's smoking a cigarette blows smoke right into his face, and then they just drive off.
Youth are most readily involved in street crime. They're most readily kind of pre-programmed to disbelieve them, to dehumanize them.
I think it really illustrates some of the differences in the way that police officers and kids experience these encounters.
Growing up on the west side here, I have been constantly thrown up beside cars, accused erroneously, searched without provocation. I see it as nothing more than normal for a young man growing up in the inner city.
Well, I feel it's kind of like a stain on our society, the fact that we allow police to pretty much, for the most part, get away with whatever they want on the streets. We need to make them not the first response to any social ill in these communities.
In 2012, my son was riding his bike home from a friend's house, and I heard some commotion going on the side of the house. Saw two white police officers handcuffing my then 13-year-old African-American son. And they claimed that there had been a burglary in the area and that he fit the description of the burglar. And the description was a black male wearing cargo shorts. Well, that could be anybody. That could be a lot of people. Don't you have something more than that? You know, all those kinds of things that would be very specific to the description, the police officer didn't have and couldn't tell me. You know, they took him in front of our house, and I tried to make sure that I held on to him at the time, because as a former reporter, I was well familiar with how police officers sometimes handle particularly young black males if there's nobody there to protect them.
Brutality's, for the most part, brutality's been a part of U.S. policing and Chicago policing since the Chicago police were created.
As a mother, I wanted to protect my son.
A young man that I talked to yesterday, the young man that got killed was his roadie, right? And he was in mourning. He sat there and cried, He himself is a member of one of the local gangs, gave me a terrible warning that given the places that he is in now and the police mindset and the gang wars, he's not too sure that he's going to live throughout the summer. He's not too sure that you'll see him in September. And he's afraid that come September or August, he won't be able to come back. And I felt rather helpless because I should be able to tell him there's a way out of this, but I'm not. I couldn't tell him that. It's sad that we've arrived at this point in American culture.
We need to take some money away from the police. And it's basically an injustice institutional injustice. And I think it's because communities already have dehumanized these kids already, and abusive cops. They get confessions. They get arrests. They get weapons. It all makes it easier. That all makes the job of the police department, the prosecutors, the courts, it all makes it easier. So they all benefit from it. We used to have reporters that reported on the police, and they looked at an institution, and they report on how the institution works. We have reporters that have adopted the mindset of the police, so they don't care if a white cop beats up a black gangbanger who's a violent criminal. It's very rare that you see a report now that's anti-police. They don't care what cops have to do to suspected gang members, which just generally means anyone that's black and brown and usually male. The Guardian has now found 16 victims in person and 7,000 by data from the CPD that have gone through Holmes, but that still isn't enough to get them to report on it. But so they have no intention of stopping it.
What's unique about North Lundale is some young men graduate, some drop out, some in jail. None of them seem to come back.
I know in Chicago we're programmed to not trust politicians, but we've gotten to a point where we know no one votes. They voted Rahm in for a second term. You know, communities had a chance to knock Rahm out of the box. I think the responsibility goes a little bit to everyone.
I can't personally go out and change it by myself. I think as an educator at North Lawndale College Prep, the teachers and I can educate our students on their rights in the Constitution, their civil rights. I think, me bringing in lawyers as guest speakers, talking to kids about their rights, me bringing the police as guest speakers, having peace circles with the police has been awesome. But really the change is starting to happen now thanks to people coming forward, having rallies, marching, and making the whole world aware of what's going on.
It's very promising with Black Lives Matters and BYP.
So I'm going to dedicate the last bit of life that I have to make sure that I have an answer for that young man, another young man who finds himself in the same predicament. When he's ready to come out of the street and change his life, I should have something for him.